What if the key to saving coral reefs wasn't a new chemical or structure, but sound? Coral reefs cover only 0.1% of the ocean, yet support 30% of marine life and the lives of millions of people. And still, up to 90% of reefs could disappear by 2050. Here is a twist. A healthy reef is loud, crackling shrimp, grunting fish, a full underwater orchestra. A dying reef? Almost silent. In this episode, I talk with Yann Bayle, AI acoustic researcher and co-founder and CTO of Reef Pulse, a company that listens to coral reefs with AI to monitor their health, and now uses underwater speakers to attract coral and fish larvae back to damaged reefs and boost restoration. This episode is all about how sound, science, responsible AI, and entrepreneurship can give reefs and coastal communities a second chance. Listen now on Blue Tech Around the World.
Blue Tech Around the World, the reference podcast for blue technologies and ocean innovation.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Blue Tech Around the World, the reference podcast for blue technologies and ocean innovation, powered by Blue Connection. I'm your host, Marilou SUC, and in this show, we explore how innovation is reshaping our relationship with the ocean. Today, we are diving into one of the most vibrant, vital, and vulnerable ecosystems on our planet, coral reefs. They cover less than 1% of the ocean surface, and yet they support 30% of all marine life. They shade our coasts, feed millions of people, fuel local economies, and even lock away carbon. Their global economic value is estimated at over $10 billion per year. But here is the alarming part. Under pressure from climate change, pollution, and human activities, up to 90% of coral reef could disappear by 2050. Imagine losing not just the rainforest of the sea, but an entire world of biodiversity and the lifelines of coastal communities. And yet, during this crisis, innovation is rising. And today's guest is at the forefront of that revolution. So I'm thrilled to welcome Yann Bayle, PhD in artificial intelligence applied to sound analysis and co-founder and CTO of Reef Pulse, a pioneering company that listens to the ocean. Yes, literally listen. Reef Pulse uses AI-powered passive acoustic monitoring to understand, protect, and even restore coral reefs. From decoding the hidden soundscape of the ocean to helping coral larvae find their new homes, this is a story about how sound and science can become powerful tools for regeneration. So Yann, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Marilou. I'm really thrilled to be there today.
Thank you very much for accepting the invitation. So before we dive into the tech magic, can you take us back to the beginning? How was Reef Pulse born?
Okay, so I could tell the story of Reef Pulse in a very short amount of time, but maybe if you can dive back at the really beginning. I was born and raised on Réunion Island, so it's a French island in the southeast of Madagascar. Someone born on an island, sometimes it's hard to see what you can do in life and you can study. So I went abroad and I went in France and the mainland of the continent, Europe, to study and to get my PhD in artificial intelligence applied to sound analysis, music analysis, and more generally speaking to audio, digital signal processing. So with this background, I really had the chance and the opportunity to work in different kind of opportunities, like in music, for example, analyzing music sound or help producing them or altering them. But thanks to Simon, which is my associate, we created Reef Pulse to help and safeguard coral reefs globally, really. So at the beginning, Simon made his PhD on passive acoustic monitoring applied to the soundscapes of coral reefs. So he did his PhD here on my island, on Réunion Island, and he had the opportunity to record some soundscape around the world in different oceans. And thanks to that, he had the idea that maybe it's not enough just to keep that in a lab, just to play around with. And he really had the opportunity and the chance with the French government to add some scholarship to pursue his dream and to make a company out of that and to propose this kind of services. He's a biologist, so he's looking for someone who can process large amount of data. And I was there. I got PhD in computer science. He's more into biology, so we just had to work together to create something great, something bigger than both of us. And that's how Reef Pulse started in 2021. And it's really hard as a scientist dedicated to make some research in the lab, some publication, to really go as an entrepreneur and trying to develop something to hire some employees. And yeah, just having a company and trying to make it run on the long run is very hard, but it's very important, I think, because what we are doing is great for the ecosystem we are working with.
Wow, really interesting story on both aspects. First, as you were mentioning, having this complementary between you and your co-founders coming from different worlds and sharing your experience and expertise to a common project. Also on the fact that, having this startup, launching this entrepreneurial journey, I think for some of us who comes from like scientific research background, to be able to run their business, having different perspective, like business model, how to make money out of it, how to have a team, hire employee, how to have a strategy is completely different. So really interested to have like a startup coming from the scientific side and then to see how to make business, but in the same time, protecting and restoring our ocean. I think a lot of our listeners who are doing a PhD, sometimes they just think about doing a career in a research. So now you just open a new door, maybe launch a startup on the ocean tech side. So thank you for that. So let's start by understanding why coral reef matters and what they are facing today. And what exactly is a coral? Is it like an animal, plant, both? Give us like the basic for understanding coral reef and what challenges they are facing today.
Yeah, great. Yeah, first thing first, a coral is an animal. So that's the basic. Starting from that, the most question I've got when I present what we are doing at Reef Pulse is that, I didn't knew corals make sounds, but coral doesn't really make sounds that we can record today with our recorders. It's more like when we talk about coral and coral reefs, it's the same that when we talk about a tree and a forest. Like a coral reef is an ecosystem. It's a whole ecosystem. You got some fishes, you've got some noise coming from boats, you've got some snapping shrimp, for example. So it's really the whole ecosystem that we are listening to and recording and working with today. So that's the second thing I would like to just clarify. Coral, so they are little animals, and they live like in symbiosis with some algae. And when there's a global warming, the little algae just cannot produce enough energy and just leave the coral. And that's why the coral become blank, like it's become totally white. And that's when the coral just perish because it needs the food supply, the nutrient from the algae to just live and thrive.
So if I understand correctly, first coral are animals, but they function like an entire ecosystem thanks to their symbiosis with algae, for example. And so if there are some circumstances in the environment where algae needs to go somewhere else, corals don't have their little neighbors that was really helpful for them to survive. So it's why we see what we call like bleaching coral.
So yeah, this is the main pictures, and obviously you've got some exceptions. So for example, some corals can tolerate living without algae for a certain amount of time. So for example, in Australia, they are finding that some species of coral can live maybe 1 or 2 days without their algae, and some can live up to weeks. So if the bleaching events are small enough, they can survive, and some new algae can just come and get back on the coral, for example. But sometimes the heat waves last too long, and they have a lot of heat waves coming back together again and again every weeks. So sometimes it's very hard for them to just thrive and just to live normally. And some research are doing on how to have some more heat-tolerant corals, for example, or how to help them thrive under this kind of circumstances in the lab, and then try to put them in the sea to see how they can react.
When we talk about threats, and one of the biggest pressure the reef space today, of course, there is climate change, the rising of the temperature. also overfishing, pollution, tourism. And just recently, actually this month, I think, confirms that we just crossed a new planetary boundary, which is ocean acidification. And that's a huge concern for coral reefs. I think there is a study from the Laboratoire d'Oceanographie de Villefranche and the University of Western Australia, actually, that show that after a year of exposure, corals and calcifying macroalgae did not acclimate, actually, and their skeleton formation remained disrupted. So in a way, it's a hope when you say that, okay, when there is some time between different events, such as like temperature, but they need some time to adapt and recover. And on this specific point, why are this so vital? Not just for marine life, but also for us. Like, why for the biodiversity, but also for people?
I think the last number we got like maybe a few months ago, it's more like 1 billion people globally depend on the coral reefs for food supply. So it's like, for example, obviously the fishes, the shrimps, but also for the coastal protection, it's like mangroves. So they protect the coastal erosion directly. But also we got some tourism. So for example, we got our sister island, Mauritius, which the economy is majorly based on tourism. So if there is no more tourism for the coral reefs, it's very hard for these kind of countries, of this kind of island, just to continue thriving. But also I would like to say they are beautiful, and it will be a shame to see them disappear because I'm also a diver. And for me, the beauty of nature is just something worth waking up every day. So it's not only how much it can bring to a country as a monetary value, for example. So it's much more like that.
When we listen to you, we can really understand the concept of ecosystemic services, not only for fisheries, but also, as you mentioned, as a barriers for coastal erosion and also sustainable food tourism. And in this podcast, I really want to show to the people the relationship we get from the ocean, human with the ocean and the ocean with us. I think coral reef are the perfect example for that. So when it comes to climate change more broadly, do we already see irreversible changes, or is there still time to act? Because we have a lot of communication about by 2050, 90% of the coral reef will disappear, etc. So my question is like really simple. Do we still have time to act?
Yeah, the fact is like each threat is really hard on coral reefs. But they can survive because they have some resilience capacity that they've got for years now. The real issue today is like they got some multiple threats coming at the same time. So for example, you got in Mayotte, which is a French island in the west of Madagascar, for example, they've got like something, bleaching events, like a cyclone, and both of them just arrived like maybe 1 week apart. So it was really devastating for this kind of ecosystem. And up to today, like we're in September, there are still signs that it maybe won't recover as a whole, and maybe up to 90% of coral reefs already disappeared from this island. So we are still trying to have some signs that maybe some spot have like tolerant species that maybe are thriving a little bit. So we are really hoping to have some new analysis on what's coming up from this kind of ecosystem. So yeah, we'll see.
Thank you very much for your view on that. I think it's one of the questions that, people ask a lot. So I think it was interesting to have your view on that.
But yeah, just to get maybe something more positive, it's like I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for coral reefs and to help them. So yeah, they face several threats. You mentioned some of them, and if we don't act today, it's obvious that we can't go anywhere with that, and we will lose all of them. It's hard, and I cannot imagine a future without them for everyone. So that's why we're here today. Not only with Reef Pulse, I'm really engaged in my personal life too. So that's why I like to have some maybe minor startups just like us, for example, maybe doing some small change that can have a huge leverage on a global scale.
Thank you very much. So if I understand, okay, there are some threats, there is a sense of emergency regarding coral reefs, but okay, there is a tech side, and thanks to Reef Pulse, for example, and other one, but there is also this mindset that if everyone at his own scale can be engaged and committed to this, it could have a global change. So thank you again for this more optimistic note, as we just mentioned. Okay, so you give me the perfect transition for, how coral reefs are traditionally monitored and what are the limits of these traditional methods right now?
Okay, so maybe let's go back a little bit in the past. So at the beginning, we didn't know nothing about coral reefs, about underwater. At first, we didn't know much how to study it. So the first thing was like maybe tens of years ago, just to dive. When the diving gear was invented, so it's pretty recent that we are studying the ocean underwater, just globally. The thing was, you just dive, just a little underwater tablet, and just pinpoint how much fishes you saw, how you think how big they were, and which coral were there, for example. So it was not much, but it was still something. So it's how it started. And then you get some more technology coming up. For example, you got the eDNA. So it's like you just take a sample, a water sample. I think you talk about it for a different podcast. You just take a tiny water sample, and from that you just can infer what was there because you get some scheme just floating around. You get something that you can gather from corals, the fishes, but also invertebrates, shrimps, and so on. But the main issue with that is that because of flow current, you can have some DNA here that come from 1,000 miles or some kilometers away. So it's not very enough just to study a given ecosystem, just maybe a few hundred meters square. So another approach, for example, is a satellite. With satellite, you can have some rough estimate about how much a bleaching event is occurring on a given coral reefs. But you've got also some drawbacks. So, for example, if you get some clouds, if you get some turbidity in the water, you cannot see also. If it's the coral reefs are too deep, also you cannot see much. But it's still a useful method that you can use to complement everything. And the main issue with the visual surveys are that it's every diver will do something different because, for example, you have a different subjectivity in how the fish is distant to you and how big it is. You get some experience also because a newcomer and experienced diver will have maybe some where to look at, how to interact with the marine life, for example. But also it's just a point, like a screenshot during a year. So maybe it's done once, maybe twice a year. So it's not enough just to interact with the ecosystem like status. It's like a diagnosis you are trying to do. For example, fish only live during the night. So how do you do? Do you dive? When you dive at night, you cannot see very far away. For example, also, you've got some different kind of dynamics in the sound that you can hear during the summer and the winter, for example. But also you get some reproduction period that's only once a year during 1 or 2 days. So you can miss that because you don't dive at the right time of the year. And also, thanks to the acoustic recordings, we know that the moment where there are more activities in the reefs is more like at dawn and dusk. Most of the visual survey are done during the day, and so they miss this kind of activities and they miss this opportunity to look at some stuff that they could see otherwise. And I would like to add also that a diver, by his own presence, just disturb marine life. So it's more like something intrusive, and some fishes just hide and don't really want to be part of this survey. So that's the main drawbacks of the visual survey. But when sometimes you present some analyses from eDNA or acoustic surveys, and when you talk to some stakeholders, it's hard to comprehend what's behind that. And some just want to dive just to be sure that what you're talking to them is true and they can confirm what you're saying. And sometimes they can, sometimes they cannot, because some insight that we give to them is not visible, for example, but it's there. So that's the main drawbacks of the visual survey today. But as I said before, we really need to work as a whole, and all these methods are complementary, really.
Thank you very much for describing this landscape of solution. And as you mentioned, it's not like competition, it's more like complementary solution, like visual, the satellite, also eDNA. And what you mentioned that seems to be really important is like the accuracy, the timing, the frequency, and also a tool that could be neutral, that's not really subjective. You mentioned that depending on the diver, the size of the fish could completely change. I couldn't be more agree. My brother, each time we go to the sea and we go fishing, it's always the biggest fish in the world. So I really understand that point, that we need to have something neutral to do some comparison. So really interesting. Thank you very much. And actually, this brings us to Reef Pulse innovation, using the sound as a kind of a diagnostic tool for coral reefs. What exactly is ecoacoustic and how is it different from bioacoustic? Can you give us a little definition here for our listener to better understand the concept and how it works?
Yeah, obviously, the way I like to approach this question is like a pyramid. It's like you've got in science, you got the top-down approach and the bottom-up approach. So when you talk about bioacoustics, you are trying to understand and listen to one thing. So, for example, I'm just trying to listen to a parrotfish grazing, for example. So it's very specific. You are just focusing on one species or one individuals in one given moment of the day in one site, for example. So it's really like a sniper just trying to understand one thing. That's bioacoustics. But if you continue to work in this kind of methods, we won't make it because there are thousands of species of fishes in the water. You've got also marine mammals producing sounds. We've got also shrimps, for example. We've got also some human-based activities. And there are so many sounds that sometimes it's good just to know maybe what for one or two species what's going on. But if you really would like to study everything, it will be impossible just to add the sum of everything and to work on everything at the same time. So another approach is ecoacoustics. It's like we're just listening as a whole to what's going on, just put an hydrophone and just listen to what we call the soundscape of a coral reef, and just gather and record everything we can hear. So, for example, we mentioned the snapping shrimp. So it's the main background that you can hear underwater. You've got also a lot of different fishes. So, for example, the parrotfish, which is just like trying to grasp some algae in the coral. You got also some groupers. So we got a lot of groupers that are pretty big and that like to make some vocalization just to maybe mate or defend some territory. But in this kind of ecosystem, we can also hear some sound that we don't know the origin. So there are many of them, and we cannot just hear, we cannot understand everything. So what we are doing is ecoacoustic is just trying to analyze what is the global volume. We don't know where does it come from, but we know that, for example, at 10 p.m. during this summer on this site, it was maybe 100 decibel. We know the trend during each day, during each hour, and this trend gives us some analysis on what we can understand and what we can do with the ecosystem. So, for example, after marine heat wave, we can see that the global volume of the whole ecosystem is decreasing, for example. And on some other frequency band, it's increasing. So sometimes you can explain why and how and which kind of animals are decreasing and other kind of animals are increasing in terms of population, but sometimes we cannot. So just understanding and having this kind of information, even if we don't understand where it does come from, can give us insight on what's going on. And maybe sometimes it's just enough. Just we know what's going on, so we can interact and maybe adjust and give stakeholders key insight on where and how to react. And sometimes it's the best. So to answer a question with a big answer is like bioacoustic is just one musician and ecoacoustic is the whole orchestra.
Okay, thank you. Very clear. Like focusing on one fish or shrimp or like the entire orchestra of the reef. Perfect. I love the idea that the sounds reveal life we don't see, like nocturnal species or hidden biodiversity. And also one thing you see that like that you have like the broad overview of what's happening, but maybe in the future we'll have the knowledge, the scientific data that will help us to interpret this data. So I think it's also really important to have this global view or the orchestra of the coral reef. So thank you for that.
Maybe just 1 second, because it's very interesting that, tomorrow we will have the ability and new algorithm to analyze that. And we can already explain what we are doing today because, for example, we've got recordings dating back from 10 years ago, and we can still analyze them because we have archived them. We still have them on our server, on our computers. So with our new algorithm that we got today, we can still have some insight on what was going on 10 years ago, what is going on 3-4 years ago on different kind of clients and recording, depending on where we recorded. And we still propose this kind of services with Reef Pulse today. We've got a diagnosis tool with the current tool we got today, but we also offer to archive them, and maybe tomorrow, because we've got like maybe a new algorithm every month or every 2 months to detect a new species. So every time we got something new, we get back to the stakeholders of marine protected areas, for example, and we give that insight to them because for us, it's really important to participate in the kind of ecosystem. And yeah, so it's another advantage of passive acoustic monitoring is that we can still analyze the data afterwards, whereas with visual survey, we cannot.
That's really good to know because, when there are a lot of startups that are working on AI, algorithm, machine learning, they need historic of data. They need a lot of data. So having this data that could be, on our servers that we can come back later and adapt with new algorithm later. I think it's really interesting to see that now you have the data, now you have the knowledge, and that you can work on that and make it intelligible for now and also for the future. So that's really good to know.
And the data is really gold in our field because, for example, if you compare ChatGPT, OpenAI, whatever doing is a large language model, for example, that are thriving recently, the main thing is that everyone can have the algorithm because it's published. It's scientific articles accessible to everyone. So everyone have access to this kind of algorithm. Everyone can just use them. The key differences between these kind of actors is like they've got different kind of data that have been labeled, and this is very important. You got the data, so we've got some recordings for us, and you got the labels. So we spend hours, hundreds of hours, just listening to everything and just making some different acoustic tag from the different biophony or entrepreneurship or geophony, for example. And that's why what makes us different. It's the data and the label all together, and what makes the artificial intelligence thrive in our company, which is a bit different because we are using AI to analyze. Whereas, for example, this kind of solution with ChatGPT, for example, they use AI to produce some results. So it's a different end of the chain.
Thank you. And actually, that's a really important point that I wanted to ask. So perfect transition again. Regarding the different, like the main type of sounds that you capture on coral reef, you talk about biophony, anthropophony, and geophony. Can you tell us more about that and about the labelization process that you are doing?
Yeah, obviously. So first of all, the biophony is every sound that was made by an animal underwater. Then you got the anthropophony, so like anthropo coming from the human-based sound. So obviously you can think of boats, but also like pile driving for the oil rig, for example. And then we got geophony. It's like we can hear thunder underwater. We can hear the rain. We can hear the waves. We can hear the current, for example. We can hear a lot of things in the water. Our job is to just record everything. And when we like to give the state of some site for a given coral reefs, for example, our job is to like clean up to only get biophony, because when we are analyzing the data, maybe we're going to have some insight on the broad presence, for example. Apart from that, we want only to analyze the biophony, and we don't want to be clouded by some rain or storms, what we could consider as noise for our recordings and for our clients, for example.
Cleaning the data, related all the noise around it to just focus on biophony. Okay, so now let's dive into the Coral Reef Concerto. What are we hearing here? Can you describe what's happening in this soundscape and what it tells us about the health and biodiversity of the reef?
Yeah, of course. The first one is when the reef is in what we can call a bad state. It's like there is not much different kind of sound. We've got some high end, like high frequencies, maybe it's prominent, and we don't have much sound in the low frequency hand. It's because mainly in the low frequency, we got a lot of fishes, for example, and the high frequency, we got a lot of snapping fringe, which just took over the community and just have an unbalanced presence in the ecosystem, for example. The second one, we can hear a lot of different crackle, noises, grunt, and we can really hear that by just the diversity of sound and their volume and how much they are present, then the ecosystem is really doing better. And we also have this high frequency, which is less prominent, and we got a lot of stamping shrimp also, but they are like just the right amount.
Okay, so what I understand is really the frequency and also the amount of sound that we can hear. So thank you very much for your expertise as a scientist on that. Actually, I'm a little curious. Are there any surprising sounds that you have recorded that change the way you interpret reef's health? Is there something that one day you say, oh, what is it that I'm hearing?
Yeah, obviously we've got many sound that we've recorded for years now that we cannot know for sure where it does come from. And especially we got some sound we've started recording 10 years ago with Simon, and it's a sound just recently, like last month. We are in a cohort of different kind of scientists, a research lab, and just working together and exchanging data and ideas. And we finally found what was the species behind this sound. It's very beautiful sound. Just to have some more curiosity out of that, we'll won't talk about that more today because it's still under review. So it's an article that will be published pretty soon.
So now I really want to understand how your technology works, like step by step. Like how do you do the site selection, the device installation, data processing, analysis, visualization, the whole value chain? How does it work? Let me know.
Yeah, so first thing first, we just discuss with our client. We still have to understand their needs, what they would like to do, how much square kilometers they would like to cover, which site are priority to cover or not. And then given that and their budget, we can just prepare some installation of our recorders. So we can see just here, we got a tripod onto which we've got a recorder, which is like a lot of batteries linked to an electronic board, which is recording the sound onto SD cards, and which is linked to a cable and to an hydrophone. An hydrophone is just a microphone that can record underwater. So we discussed with the client. We put our recorders and hydrophones in the sites we selected together that are the most important to monitor, for example. And then every month, depending on what they would like to do, every 4 to 7 months, we just go on site and gather the recorders and the SD cards. The tiny SD cards we are working with are like more than 1 terabyte of storage. So it's a lot of data and can store approximately 2 months of data. I really would like to diminish and to decrease our impact on the environment. So for example, when we got some projects in different ocean basins, we don't move ourselves to gather the data. So we just teach people how to do that. And then they just upload the data to our servers using internet.
Okay, so it's a data logger, and now the people from all over the world can just take the data, put on the servers, and you, from Reef Pulse, you can analyze the data.
That's it. Starting from that, we got some, obviously we got some local server we are working with because it's very important for the environment to have your server in your office because you have direct link to them. It avoid us to have some back and forth from mainland France or another continent. So it's a lot of bandwidth that will be used otherwise. And we also have some key infrastructure here to also archive our data because, as I told before, it's gold to us. So we got some different kind of replication and different kind of servers around the world where we just archive the data once and we don't touch them anymore. But the data we are working with every day are just next to us and we just can access to them every day. And starting from that, our team here, we just build some tool to analyze the data and trying to clean up the sound, trying to pinpoint on the bioacoustic part some key species or detect some bot noise, pollution, for example, but also to work on an ecoacoustic metrics to understand what were the sound pressure level, what was the volume, for example, at some time. And coming from that, we created a dashboard with a map and also with some key insight to propose to our clients some way to understand what's going on, and they can explore the different kind of analysis we are doing. So, for example, we got some nice correlation between the temperature and the parrotfish grazing, because parrotfish grazing come from the way they eat the algae, for example, and algae just come from direct sunlight. So when there is more or less sunlight, there is more or less algae, and we can know how the parrotfish are grazing. And parrotfish grazing is like it's a key ecosystem function because it's like the herbivory in terrestrial way of speaking. And underwater, around coral reefs, if you know where are coral reefs more scrapped by parrot fishes, we can give insight to the stakeholders, and we can know maybe where we can have some, maybe for parrot fishes, reintroduction. So clients, tripods underwater, we gather the data, we analyze the data, and we display the data to the client, and we talk together about main and key insight and actions to get. So for example, we got some fish species that we have recorded for years, and we know that at one moment in time during the year, and it's the same day every year, there is a peak of vocalization for these key species. So we know that this day has to be like a sanctuary, and you have to have a no-go zone for just to protect them, because if you make people understand, like, well, for example, the fishermen, that these key moments have to be protected because it will help the whole population regrow again, they understand and they know that it's for them also, because they will have more fish quota increase, for example. So it's kind of insight we've got. We got also the whales. Sometimes it's very interesting for the stakeholders because, for example, here on an island, we got some whale watching. So we just go with the boat. We just have maybe 10 minutes, and you can see some whales, maybe it's really close to the shore. It's really nice. You can swim with them, for example. But thanks to acoustics, we can hear them arriving way sooner, for example, during the season. So we can help organization and stakeholders just adjust the different key periods for the whale watching season that really vary depending on the years. And sometimes it can up to maybe 1 or 2 months, for example.
Thank you for this great example, actually, because it shows us how these key data are really important also for the other stakeholders. So you were talking about sustainable fisheries, so understand when you have, need to protect to make the next generation of the fish, for this renewable, but also for sustainable tourism with whale watching. So my question behind is, what kind of information can we extract from soundscape? Like your customers, they already know, okay, I want to know the activities of this key species, the noise pollution, or maybe for marine protected areas, for example, the detection of infraction in no entry areas.
Yeah, it's really depend on the clients, but what you say is correct. It's everything you say. So maybe we can start with an example. Sometimes they want to have the noise pollution because it's mandatory for them. It's a regulatory issue because of European law, for example. Some clients just want to have some information about key species or noise pollution, but some clients want to have everything that we've got, and every time we've got some new algorithm, you give it to them. But for noise pollution, there is no really frame around how to deal with that around coral reefs. It's more developed, for example, for protecting marine mammals around big offshore construction, for example, and they have some countermeasure when you have some bubble circle around the construction to help protect the sound propagation and decrease the impact on marine life. But around coral reefs, there is nothing today protecting coral reefs' life. And we know from different kind of scientific literature and articles that underwater sound, if they are too high, can produce huge amount of degradation on the marine life. So it can decrease their capacity to forage for food, for example, their predation ability, their mating ability. Every sound that a boat makes to an ecosystem make some fishes hide. Sometimes sound can also kill directly the marine life. It's too loud.
Actually, we have an episode on that with the French startup Greenov, who are developing the subsea quieter, and we're doing some technology on that. Just one more question on the technological aspect with underwater monitoring. What are the main advantage of your methods and your solution compared to the traditional other monitoring solutions that we talked about before, for example?
So yeah, the main advantages are the fact that we can just have the system underwater, which is non-intrusive, and you can just forget about it and just have some key insight months later. It's really a continuous monitoring of the ecosystem.
I think we really are entering into a new era of ocean science with the monitoring is evolving. We have seen the rise of eDNA that you presented to us to detect species from water samples. And now we are adding this acoustic signatures as another layer of information. And I think it's really important what you say, that these are these complementary tools that help us understand the marine ecosystem with much better depth and precision. So just before jumping out into the other aspects, you told me you were deploying across the 3 oceans, including a mission in New Caledonia. So can you tell us more about that? Just a little insight about what you are doing there?
Yeah, of course. First, we have to know that France is the only country in the world with island and coral reefs in the free ocean. So we really have this chance. And I think we are the fourth country with the most coral reefs globally. So France really have a role of leader in coral reef monitoring, in coral reef restoration. And for us, it's really important to present that first. And given that, we got the chance and the opportunity, of course, to start with Reunion Island, but we've got also some contract with Mayotte, for example, which is still in the Indian Ocean, but also in Caribbean with Guadeloupe, where we got some nice analysis, and it's still interesting to see that some things are the same, so the whale sound and then the boats noise pollution, for example, but the fishes and the shrimps were really different.
So beyond monitoring, Reef Pulse is now moving into restoration, and sound is again at the heart of it. What I read is that research has shown that coral larvae don't just drift randomly in the ocean. During this stage of their lives, their activities search for the right place to settle. And there are fascinating work from the Woodhull Oceanographic Institution that demonstrates that the larvae can actually use acoustic from reefs to make their choice. So healthy reefs are full of sounds, as we just listened together. As you mentioned, the crackling of the snapping shrimp or the grunts of the fish defending their territory, looking for mates or feeding. And as you mentioned, by contrast, the degrading reefs are almost silent. So their difference can literally influence whether coral larvae decide to settle or not. And I think that's exactly the principle behind Reef Pulse's new program, correct? So what is acoustic restoration and how does it work in practice?
Yeah, that's it. So Reef Pulse, we got two solutions. The first one is a diagnosis. So we talk about that a lot. And the second one is a restoration. So the idea is to deploy an underwater speaker and to broadcast underwater ambient sound recorded on pristine ecosystem that we've got previously. And then this kind of sound will attract different kind of larvae. So for example, fishes, but also oysters, because we won't work on oyster, obviously, in the coral reefs, but it can attract a lot of different marine animals. We only worked for now on fishes and coral larvae, but other scientists have worked on different kind of species, and they are still discovering another kind of advantage of broadcasting sound underwater. So yeah, underwater speaker broadcast some sound and it attracts some larvae that would otherwise have just drifting away in the big blue in the deep ocean. And so it's really interesting just to help this kind of larvae to pinpoint some nice location to settle. And it's what we call the recruitment of larvae, for example.
So it's almost like giving them a GPS signal saying, okay, here is the party, here is the good sound, here is a healthy reef, come grow there. This is the best place to be, correct?
Yeah, that's it. And larvae, being coral larvae or fish larvae, use sound, but also chemical signature or light, for example, to guide themselves in the ocean and to settle in a propice environment. So it's really important for them to have some kind of signal. And our goal is to help them. So the acoustic part is really important for us. And we've got the recordings making that possible. So there are some different kind of studies that have been made in different oceans, but not in the Indian Ocean. And our goal is to be the first to do that in the Indian Ocean. And we started that just this week. And our goal is to be the biggest experiment made on coral reef enrichment and with acoustic boosting today, because we've got a large amount of sites that we are boosting with acoustic. We only got 25 years before 90% of them disappear. So yeah, it's a sprint. So we got a lot of work to do. We really would like to end our research on this project and start to commercialize this solution at the beginning of next year. Yeah.
Wow, really amazing. I like the idea that it's kind of you are organizing an ocean party underwater. And also one point that is really important is that all the works that you were doing before, like having this data, understanding what's the acoustic signature of a healthy reef, help you now to recreate this environment. So it's really cool to see the link between your two activities, like the one really on the monitoring, understand the environment, and then trying to recreate with your partners. So I wish you the best of luck for this project. I'm really looking forward to see the results. Truly, I find this topic really like deeply moving on a personal level because I had a chance to see coral reef restoration efforts in Moria, French Polynesia, where the Cryo Research Centers is doing incredible work on coral health. And there were also these NGOs, the coral gardeners, in planting corals fragment to rebuild reef. Also, the amazing opportunities to participate in the Ocean Leader program with Peacebot. And we visited the coral nursery in the fish sanctuary of Ora Cabeza in Jamaica, and where there are small colonies that were like grown and later transplanted to degraded reef. And just being underwater with my mask, fins, and snorkel, witnessing both the suffering of the damaged corals, but also the dedication of people trying to help them. I think it's something that I never forget. And just seeing that there are some technology like Reef Pulse that can amplify this restoration efforts, I think it's really amazing. Like you give tools to people on the field to have more impact. So really, thank you for that. It's really an amazing new project. Tell us a little more about like this program React in La Réunion. How do you work with this whole ecosystem of NGOs, research, university? How do you work as a whole to make this restoration efforts like more impactful?
Yeah, we work like by understanding what's going on currently and how we can enhance and optimize everything. So, for example, the project you mentioned are a really cool project, and they can benefit from acoustic enrichment because it's also it's a complementary solution. Because when you have coral nurseries, maybe broadcasting some sound can help them thrive and can help animals to settle, for example. So it's not one fit all solution as the acoustics with the eDNA and visual surveys and satellite. And also the acoustic enrichment project is really something we thought about as a complementary solution to help boost other projects, but also can be used as a standalone solution to help some degraded reefs thrive again. Our goal with this project in Reunion Island is to be sure and to understand in what circumstances it can be used, maybe the sound limit, the noise pollution limit under which we cannot use it, or maybe what is the degraded state of the ecosystem up to which it can work, for example. So we really would like to understand everything around that. And the previous studies have only worked on maybe few months, so very short-term programs of acoustic enrichment, and we are working on years. So we would like to understand how year on year the acoustic enrichment can benefit from the coral reefs locally, but also at the whole ecosystem, maybe going up maybe to kilometers.
On these specific matters, like how quickly can we see result from acoustic restoration? Are we talking in weeks, months, years?
The previous studies mentioned 40 days. So it's like, yeah, you've got 1 to 2 months of acoustic restoration, and you've got some boost in the maybe from 2 to 10 times more species of corals or coral larvae, for example, depending on species. So sometimes it's only 2, sometimes it can be up to 4 or up to 10. So we really would like to understand in the Indian Ocean to which species it is best suited, for example, and to help marine conservationists work on that. Our goal is really to have one monitoring system in every coral reef around the world, and to have available at least the coral reef acoustic boosting available for every reef that could be saved. And we know that today there are approximately maybe 15,000 reef sites monitored globally, but we know that there are much more that need monitoring. We also know that thanks to European law, there are up to 30% of coral reef that should be more protected than today. So it's a lot of data, it's a lot of new sites to monitor. And we also know that in the last satellite mapping of the Earth, that there are much more corals than we thought previously in terms of square kilometers. So it's a lot of coral reefs to help before 2050.
Wow, really amazing. Actually, I'm thinking about something else. Is that, right now there is also the rise of all the biodiversity credit or how to measure the impact of the restoration efforts. And actually, the data that you are providing are gold for these people, the ones that do the conservation efforts, the ones that finance them, all this ecosystem of stakeholders around coral reef restoration efforts. So how do you see yourself with Reef Pulse regarding this specific aspect of providing data more like on the monitoring of this conservation effort?
we are here anytime they need us. But it's been years now they are talking about that, and it's still foggy how they will apply that. When we analyze some sound, we can give directly some key actions and feedback on the stakeholders, and they can act now. But with this kind of credits, we really don't know how it will apply to our ecosystem, to the blue tech and to our deep tech that we are at Reef Pulse as a startup. So we are not relying on that to have some income, for example. We know it will come one day, and we hope that it will help people understand that they are linked to the sea one way or another. But while waiting, we are still pursuing our work and trying to find another way to have some fun.
That's a perfect transition again. Who are your main clients today? Like more conservation organization, government, research institute, private company? And what is your business model? Because you just say it. How do you balance your environmental mission with financial sustainability? So tell us more about that. How do you make money? Who are your clients? How do you combine all of this?
So for now, Reef Pulse is a B2G. So it's a business to government business model because it's how we started. Because we started with like public funds from a public organization and public research laboratory, and really wanted to develop our technology, understand how the entrepreneurship journey will go. And it's been 4 years now, and we know that we've got a path to working with B2G, with governments is really important to us. We use that as a proof of concept to develop our technology, to understand what clients really wanted. But now we are opening for new clients because we are opening to international clients and also to business. We are becoming a B2B also. We are making a fundraising round currently, so in 2025, to go abroad and to develop our technology at the global scale. And for us, it's really important to help this kind of ecosystem thrive globally, not only in France and its islands. For example, our sister island, Mauritius, have a key income coming from tourism. The resort have a lot of people just coming to enjoy the sea, to enjoy coral reefs, to enjoy diving, and have some restoration program when you can help just plant some coral, for example. Our goal will be to work with them and provide some services to this kind of actors. But our clients could also be a research lab as a client, but they don't have the tool to gather and to archive data, to make them reproducible over the years. And it's what we are trying to propose to them. So this kind of services also, because as a scientist, you focus on the key aspect of the scientific question that you are trying to answer. You don't want to have a burden to handle terabytes of data and to handle the storage and the analysis. You just want to focus on the main biological aspect of the work. And another will be some key actors in the infrastructure wanting to maybe make some construction around coral reefs. For example, an extension of an airport on the sea. That's where Reef Pulse could be present, because we could help monitor and have a baseline before construction and after construction and around the construction, trying to see that everything is going correctly. So this is the kind of clients we will reach next year.
Very interesting to see that you really begin and focus on the B2G, like you say, business to government. And then, of course, the scientific research, providing good data and that they can focus only on their scientific works. After for the B2B, I really like the idea of diversifying the source of revenue. You mentioned like different link with other sector of the blue economy. Blue tourism with resorts and hotels that have an interest, like it's a win-win situation of having this restoration program or for the snorkeling and diving for the clients. And also, as you mentioned, like maritime work, offshore construction, like harbor, port, other construction at sea, to have this baseline and environmental impact study, which is now legally required in a lot of projects in a lot of countries. So I can see that there are a lot of opportunities also in the business model, because most of the entrepreneurs that I meet, sometimes they really don't know how they can combine the environmental aspect with the economic issues to be a profitable business. So I can see that you are in the good direction, and that's great for the future of Reef Pulse.
Yeah, and that's how we work, because we are trying to follow the agile method where we make a step, we validate the step, and then we move forward. And that's what we wanted to do. First, have one contract, one client, which is good for validating our proof of concept, and then moving a little bit step by step, having more clients in France first, and then internationally. And as you can see, it's Reef Pulse, not Coral Pulse. That means it's in our future, not for now, but very soon, we'll be moving to other reefs and other kind of ecosystem around the world. We are not focusing only on coral reefs in the future. So that's our goal, is just to move step by step and to be sure that what we are doing today is good, and then trying to propose some new kind of technology, new kind of ecosystem monitoring, and also solutions.
Great. This is a masterclass in lean management, startup mindset, and, long-term strategy. So thank you for sharing your entrepreneurial view on that. We often talk actually about how technology can help nature, but technology also has its own footprint, and that's a challenge we must address. And using AI to protect ecosystem is powerful, but artificial intelligence itself consumes energy and resources. So how do you approach the challenge of reducing the environmental footprint of the technology you develop?
We've got some key aspect of our work is trying to reduce our footprints using AI, because as you mentioned, AI are using GPUs, which are using a lot of power. And our goal is to decrease our carbon footprint, but everything around that, because we need some electricity, some water, you need some cooling. We have some program where we try to optimize our algorithm to have the best outcome possible, but we put in the equation the amount of energy consumed, so that we can maybe sometimes balance different kind of algorithm. When there are new algorithms developed, we can switch to it because we know it have the same performances and it consumes less. So that's our work. It's more like a deep work that the client cannot see, because for them the results are the same, but it's something that we included right from the start, right from the beginning, to monitor the energy consumption, the size of our neural networks that we are using. So for us, it's really important to take that into account, but also to try to have some rightful management of our servers. So the easiest solution would just have to have my personal laptop and just buy some cheap server anywhere around the world and just make some connection to upload the data, download the data, trying some models, neural networks models and algorithm and architectures. And it will just consume a lot of bandwidth, so a lot of electricity, not only for the artificial intelligence part, for the world network part. And since we are in Reunion Island, you can just imagine how much bandwidth we've got with every continent that will have some servers. There are some clusters locally trying to develop some data centers, still a work in progress, but we are trying maybe to understand how we can include that in our carbon footprint and how we can include that in our way of doing things, because we are not here to worsen the situation. So we really need to have some key aspects that we are managing. So for example, we have the power consumption, the bandwidth we are using, the laptops we are using also. We are trying to make them repairable. So we are buying some different kind of computer gear. And also in the conception we are trying to do for the acoustic enrichment, we have selected some kind of materials, the metals that are source of batteries. Sometimes it's cheaper, sometimes it's much more expensive. It's really time consuming to do that, but it's really in our core DNA to help save coral reefs while not degrading the water environment.
Wow, really impressive. And it seems that it's really from the beginning of your activities that you try to implement that on the way you design, you train, you deploy your system with the optimization, the choice of the material, the processing. So really, really impressive, actually. I'm really impressed. According to you, Raila, what are the next technology or innovations that will reshape the protection and restoration of the reefs in the next 5-10 years? If you can just give me like your view on that.
Wow, that's a really big
Big question.
Obviously, the easy answer is to say that they will have some better algorithm with better performances, with less electricity consumption, that will have some better hydrophones that can gather sound farther with better quality, or that will consume way less batteries, for example, or that we have maybe have some combination of technologies. I really like this idea, because today it's where we're going. We can combine acoustics with video, for example, with satellites. It's, for me, something that will have maybe a digital twin that will maybe emerge and will be really used, because it's an old idea, but it's really hard to implement, because it means having different kind of actors working together. Yeah, so that will be the main technology that will emerge in the coming years to try to understand what's going on. But also you can have some intelligent drones just mapping the sea and trying to understand with a different kind of sensor what is in terms of salinity, have some cameras, maybe have some acoustic tag. It's active acoustics that can help maybe pinpoint some animals that have been tagged altogether, and also passive acoustic to record the soundscape, and also all kind of sensors that could help maybe map the ocean floor and how the ocean floor is moving, for example.
Wow, thank you. It sounds like a dream. Digital twin for all the ocean matters. I know that it's a hot topic right now. And so my last question before we ended up this episode, what advice would you give to young people who want to launch a marine environmental project using new technology? What would be your best tips for the new generation?
Hard question also. Maybe the network. I think the network, who you're talking with, how you manage to reach out to some people that have the right connection or the right idea. For me, it will be the best advice is like to have a community that you can drive, that you can work with, and you can discuss to find the right leverage to work. Because I think the sea is a good example. Everything is connected. We are talking as human as maybe the Indian Ocean, maybe the Pacific Ocean or different kind of seas. But if you really look, everything is connected. Every ocean is connected. And if you can look at the Earth from a different kind of perspective, it's all one big ocean. And for me, it will be the same. Like everything is connected. We are all connected in one way or another. And we have to work together, and that we cannot just work on our side and trying to make something work. It's really best to work together. So competition is not a problem. It's really like just having some connection to make something work. And that will be the starting point of the entrepreneurship journey.
Wow, thank you very much. I think it's really helpful, and you address two really important points, which is like the connection network when you enter in the business, and also don't be afraid about the competition, as you mentioned. I think we need all the voices, all the talents in the field of the blue economy. So thank you very much, Yann, for sharing Reef Pulse journeys and your insight into how artificial intelligence and sound can help protect and restore coral reefs. For me, actually, this episode is a reminder that innovation isn't just about technology. It's about giving nature a voice and listening carefully to what it tells us. So again, thank you to all our listeners who joined us today on Blue Tech Around the World. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, to share it with your network, and stay tuned on the next episode. So thank you again, Yann, for being with us today.
And lastly, be the change you wish to see in the world.
Thank you. I like this one. Thank you for this beautiful ending note. Thank you, Yann.
Much, Marilou.